Welcome to the DGD podcast. As always, your hosts, Juan Daniels, Robert Reynolds, the NCDGD himself. And first off, welcome to the show. We're gonna bring on our friend from the Dore Report, and we're gonna talk Vanderbilt in just a little bit. But Juan, I want to get your thoughts on something first before we talk Vanderbilt. Make sure that if you're watching today's show, like, subscribe, follow. If you're listening to it on podcast when this drops, hey, make sure you like it, follow us as well. And if you're Apple, 5-star reviews never hurt. Um, so obviously, listen, fall camp is underway. Juan, did you know that it's 22 days until Georgia football?
That's it.
22.
22.
22.
It's right around the corner. About to happen.
Oh my goodness. I'm sitting here sweating like a fat man at a buffet waiting for the last pancake to get made. Can't be lying. I'm not lying. Listen, I'm excited for it. I'm tired. I'm at this point for the season that I just need to see football, right? Not even preseason football, NFL wise. I'm just talking Georgia football. I need to see Kirby Smart getting pissed off and cussing on the mic. Don't even realize it. I need that in my life again. And I got to wait 22 more days. And it's one of these things where I'm just pulling my hair out. But listen, that also means there's 22 days to make sure that you have something black to black out the bins. Obviously, listen, our guy Turner from the Spike Squad has been on several times. You see it every day if you follow the socials. Black out the bins, guys. That means get you something black. And no better place to go get you something black than a place like Alumni Hall, right? 10 minutes from campus in Athens. Got licensed Nike gear, right? Listen, this polo right here, Alumni Hall. Licensed Nike, all right? And it's comfortable as hell. I'm just going to leave it there. Cutter and Buck, all these different brands you got, right? alumnihall.com or check them out in store in Athens, 10 minutes from campus. Juan, with that being said, let's give a shout out to the brigade. Let's do a quick roll call. Seems like we got some OGs in here, man. Rudes and Patrick over here talking up a storm.
Rudes, what's going on, man? Patrick, what's happening?
Now we got. Let's see if we got. Let's read some comments real fast. We already got a Juan fan club comment. The hashtag dropping in the chat. I'm not even mad about that. Already a good question while we wait to talk Vanderbilt, though. I need to know who the next starting inside linebacker is and future general of that vaunted defense. Juan, this might be a good question to start off, but, what is your thought on who the starting inside linebacker to replace N'Kobe is?
Now, to be honest with you, I don't know. It's funny. I was talking to a guy, kind of an inside guy today, and he said that one of the things that we're going to be faced with is we will not have the same defense as we had last year. Make something happen. But as far as who's going to be the starter, who's actually going to be that year or that future general, it's just kind of right now. I know secondary wise, we've got good guys and some Starks. But, inside linebacker, again, not too sure.
I'm calling Pop Johnson. I don't know if he starts I don't know if he's going to be the dominant starter that you see this year. But I'm telling you right now, Pop Johnson's going to be the guy. I'm just going to leave it there. But listen, obviously we're here to talk some Vanderbilt football, right? And obviously, listen, this is part of our Enemy Intel series here. And there's nobody better to bring on to discuss and gain insight to Vanderbilt than our guy Billy Derrick over at the Dore Report. Billy, welcome to the show, my man. There we go. Look at that. It's like almost on demand.
Yeah.
On demand, folks. It looks like we might be going through some technical difficulties. I swear to God, I think it's the Napier hackers, man. They're jacking the show. I'm just going to leave that there.
Probably so.
While we wait, look, So while we let Billy get situated here, folks, I just want to let y'all know. Remember, make Juan laugh again. Let's see if Juan can hold it down, not laugh today's show. All right. So if you're not familiar, if you're listening, I'm just saying the brigade knows, right? The brigade knows Juan's already preparing for this. I'm just saying he's preparing for it. He's got his poker face on. I'm just going to leave it there. Okay. Just leaving it there. And while we're waiting to get Billy back on to answer this question, I don't think there's going to be a spelling bee today, Patrick. Not today. We're actually going to try to talk a little bit of football. Um, I understand, but I'm just saying we're talking football today. Um, yeah. So we'll see what happens there as we get Billy back on. I guess we could. I guess Juan, while we wait, let's talk some more Georgia football. Oh, speak of the devil himself. Let's see what's going on. Billy, can you hear us? Let's see what's going on. Anyways,
we need that. We need that KTG. We need that KTG.
Yeah, somebody let us know about this KTG Wi-Fi. Internet. Oh my goodness, the KTG Wi-Fi is something serious. Roots brings up a good point. With great power comes great responsibility. That's what you get for good, making you do so beautiful. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Billy, are you there, my man? There we go. We're seeing. We're making progress here, folks.
I like that background. That background.
I do.
Nice.
You know what? I do. For those listening, we got Billy here working through some technical difficulties. We'll see what's happening here, but we'll comment. We'll even commentate this until everything gets situated. I have to make this call here. Apparently, Joel says that Caleb's got that elite Wi-Fi in here. I paid my $10. Apparently, she helped pay the Wi-Fi bill for Caleb, not us. You know, I'm just gonna leave that there. But anyways, Juan, while we get everything situated, my man, let's try to figure something out here, right? I want to go back to this question because we kind of briefly jumped off of it, but I want to go back now that we have a little bit of time to let things go. Overall, you know, let's see. Hold on, we have movement. We have movement. Billy, are you there?
I hear you guys, but I can't hear you through my headset.
Uh-oh. But we can hear you, so there's progress. It's better
than
we
can definitely hear you.
Image.
Okay. I got you guys now.
Absolutely. So
yeah, perfect.
Now for the topic of the day. Obviously, listen, welcome to the show, Billy. You've been on here before. Welcome back.
Right? It's
been a long time coming. Obviously, listen, the topic for today is, you know, gaining some insight, right? Part of our enemy intel series, where we talk Vanderbilt football, kind of get a feel of, you know, pulse of the program, names to know, perhaps, like just things like this, right? Just going to let you know our brigade is pretty rowdy, so be careful. Don't take things personally. They are rambunctious. Just going to leave that there.
I already saw one of the comments.
Yeah.
But yes, nonetheless. So we have Vanderbilt, and obviously, before we talk Vanderbilt, I want to let you talk about the Dore Report. You know, if you're not familiar with it, right? Dore Report is a Vanderbilt podcast, actually part of SEC Unfiltered, like ourselves. So tell some people about the Dore Report, my man.
Yes. So my buddy Will Byram and I, we've been going at it for about, I think, almost 2 years now, kind of, you know, covering Vanderbilt football, basketball, baseball. And, you know, we started, I think I started it 3 years ago. He jumped on about a year in, and, you know, it's been really fun kind of adding another perspective to the show. And, you know, especially with Vanderbilt football and Vanderbilt basketball, not up to par with what Vanderbilt baseball has been doing lately. It's definitely been a sort of a rough patch for us, especially this past year or so. But especially with basketball, basketball's on the up and up right now, and football, their season Of course, getting going here in a couple weeks. They'll open the season at Hawaii. But yeah, so we're similar to you guys, pretty new. Not I don't know if I'd call us a startup, but we're still early in the process and continuing to build, and definitely looking forward to seeing how much we can grow.
Hey, Billy, I know that was probably a tough loss losing Dylan Lesko for
Yes.
baseball, but congratulations. He got drafted, so he and my son, they're great friends. Just nice to see such a great kid get an opportunity to go play some pro baseball. But it was nice that he chose Vandy. So Vandy must have something special there when it comes to baseball.
No doubt. What Tim Corbin has done there is really unprecedented. I mean, I never would have thought a coach at any sport at Vanderbilt would be able to do the things that he's done. And he's the highest paid coach in college baseball in the country, in the SEC, and he deserves to be. And guys like Dylan Lesko, bringing them on campus for a visit, even if they don't commit to Vanderbilt, that's what he does. He's got 5-6 guys this year that were drafted, and they're not even coming to campus anymore. They're already headed. So that's kind of what Corbin has done in kind of the national recognition. This is not just a Southeast regional type of team. This is a national, and it's actually turning into a global brand as well, because they're getting all kinds of recruits from everywhere, all across really the globe too. So it's definitely been impressive to see that, but there are some challenges with it as well with NIL, as you guys know, in the transfer portal. We'll have to see how Tim Corbin and the Vanderbilt baseball program kind of attack that.
Absolutely, my man. Now, we also have our first question here, switching topic back to football. Roots has a good question here, Billy. He asks, every opponent has the ability to land a knockout. What type of offensive philosophy should we expect to see from Vanderbilt?
That's a good question. I actually had Robbie Weinstein on the Dore Report last night, and I asked him that same question because I'm wondering the same thing. Because you look at last year, it's there's not much to go off of. You had Ken Seals starting the season, and that was an offense that was built around Ken Seals. But then halfway through the season, Mike Wright becomes the starter, and now they have to sort of shift, in the middle of the fire, in the middle of an escalator, to a Mike Wright offense where he is the total opposite quarterback of Ken Seals. So this season, with him being named the starter, you got to believe they will be a run-heavy offense. Number one, he can run very well, actually. He's probably the fastest player on the team, if not one of them. And they have a slew of running backs. I'd say they have 3, maybe 4 running backs that are legit SEC guys. I mean, they've got speed, they've got strength, they're experienced, they've got some young guys coming in as well. So the only thing with that is their offensive line is obviously at the bottom of the SEC. So when you want to run the ball in the way Vanderbilt does, that's what I'm interested to see. So in terms of their, I think the question was about a philosophy. They want to run the ball. They want to establish the run, but at the same time, they feel like they've got a tight end that can make some plays. They feel like they've got at least one receiver that can make some plays. But if other guys step up, you will also see them want to take deep shots downfield. You saw that at times last year. So overall philosophy, it's going to be run oriented, really, because they have to be. That's what their quarterback presents and their running back. So, but I'll be interested to see how the offensive line contributes to that philosophy.
I was wondering as
any word on how AJ Swan is doing? As he's an incoming freshman. He actually switched from, I think it was Maryland, to go to Vanderbilt. So obviously, Coach, he's making some good things happen, and that's another thing too, is they're getting some really, really good recruits. So any word on him?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was at the scrimmage on Saturday. Last Saturday was actually a shortened scrimmage, and he's the best quarterback on the team. He's the most talented quarterback on the team. He has the best arm talent. Obviously he is a freshman, so he's going to make freshman mistakes. But the throws he made I haven't seen in a while from a Vanderbilt quarterback. You got to go back to Kyle Shermer, 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and the throws he was making. So yeah, Swan has he's looked like a freshman. I'm not going to come out here and say, he's lit the world on fire, and he's all of a sudden in front of Ken Seals, who's the backup now. He's the third string right now. But he looks the part. He looks like he's got all the tools to become, that next Vanderbilt quarterback that can sit back there, sit in the pocket, and stay strong and make the throws. Because the throws he was making, like I said, I haven't seen in 4 or 5 years. So, he's a kid out of Georgia, like you said, originally committed to Maryland, but Clark Lee came in kind of late, and you got to imagine Clark Lee's message was, "Hey, you're going to be able to play early." Now, I don't know about year one, but next year is the year for Swan to, kind of start to step into that role. So it's going to be interesting. He's got everything you need, but he's just got to be developed. It's all about development with this program. So I've been impressed. I've been really impressed. A small sample size. I'm looking forward to maybe going to another scrimmage and seeing him perform. But yeah, he's got all the tools you want in a young quarterback.
As you talk about AJ Swan, Juan, right? You see what I did there? I want to transition. I got another name over on the defensive side of the ball, and I want to see where the progress is here. Marietta kid, Daniel Martin, right, linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
How's he progressing, right? If I'm not mistaken, that was the top guy from y'all's class last year, if I'm not mistaken. So, what's that trend? Have you seen how he's progressing, things like that? I feel like if he turns out to be what I think he could be an impact player ultimately.
Oh, no doubt. He's similar to Swan. He's got the makings of everything, but you see the development that he needs. He looks like a safety right now. I think they want him to play linebacker. But he's got the height. He's all of 6'3". He might even be getting close to 6'4".
He's smaller though, right? Like he's almost like 200 pounds, I think, coming
yeah,
out of high school.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah. He's definitely got to put on some more pounds and just learn how to play that position in the SEC, which we all know is not easy at all. That usually takes 2, maybe even 3 years of development for a linebacker to be ready to go in the SEC. So, but who knows? The coaching staff could look at him and say, "Hey, we want you to play safety, or we want you to play our anchor position." That Clark Lee has kind of identified. And I don't know if you guys remember Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at Notre Dame, who's in the NFL now. Clark Lee worked with him and developed him into a top NFL prospect. And not many people expected that from him when he got on campus. That's kind of what I would expect from Daniel Martin, a guy 2-3 years down the road. He's an all SEC type linebacker because he's got, like I said, he's got the speed, and he's got the length that you need at that position. Kind of reminding me of a little bit of Zach Cunningham, a guy that was a stud at Vanderbilt and is now actually in Nashville with the Tennessee Titans. So yeah, he's rated high and he has looked the part. Didn't get as much of a look at him as I did AJ Swan, especially in that scrimmage last week. But yeah, just looking at him on the field and kind of running around, you can tell down the road he's going to be a really talented player.
No doubt. And listen, I think you look at right, and I think this is going to kind of you'll see where this goes. Right, obviously, Coach Lee comes in. Last season, Vanderbilt finished, I want to say 30, right outside the top 30. I think it was. Right outside the top 30 in recruiting class. And, me and Juan have had several discussions that, a top 20, you have to be like top 5 in the SEC to really matter, right? Mm-hmm. Like to have a shot. But 32nd for Vanderbilt, in my opinion, considering what it had been prior to him coming in here, that's a good start. Right? I think that's a really good start. And listen, even now, I think y'all are, obviously it's still early. But you've got several good commits in the 23 cycle as well. Looking at, I think Martell Height, I think that's his name. I think it is a cornerback out of Rome. Excuse me. What are from a fan base perspective, what's the general pulse on Coach Lee as a, how his job, how he's doing, whether it be from recruiting, from on-field production. What's the overall pulse?
Yeah, great question. After last season, I would have never imagined that Vanderbilt would have had even a top 40 recruiting class. I mean, after a 2-10 season that looked like that, you're able to secure a top almost 30, a top 35 class. That's pretty impressive. So, what Clark Lee has done in recruiting early on has told me that he has a very experienced and talented recruiting staff around him. A guy by the name of Barton Simmons is in that group. And what separates, I think, Vanderbilt right now is they realize what is at stake here, and they realize how they have to recruit. They're not going to go out there and recruit like a Georgia or an Alabama or a Tennessee. They can't. And you can go after those same guys, but as a whole, from a whole recruiting standpoint, you have to think outside the box. You have to. And so for Vanderbilt, they're looking at measurables. They're looking at traits from these players. And you look at a guy like a Daniel Martin, who is not big enough right now, but he's got everything you need. He's got the traits to down the road become a dominant SEC player. Same exact thing with AJ Swan. Same exact thing with a 6'7", 280-pound defensive lineman prospect that they got out of Germany. Last name is Otara. I'm not sure how to pronounce his first name, but I mean he's a monster. So those are the type of players that most of these guys are not going to come in and play right away, but measurables and traits and culture, that's what they're recruiting to. And that's what most coaches recruit to. But you look around the SEC, Georgia, Bama, Florida, you get a 5-star in, there's not a whole lot of talking to do. It's like, you want to come play for us? Let's go. Let's get you on campus. Let's go. For Vanderbilt, you got some other things to think about. You've got academics to think about. You've got other teams that are also recruiting that player you're recruiting. So that is kind of number one. Number two, it's been interesting to see the guys that Vanderbilt has targeted, for example, Bartell Height, a guy out of Rome, Georgia, who I'm forgetting where he was committed. Was he originally committed somewhere before Vanderbilt? I don't think it might have been Louisville.
I don't remember.
I know he had
remember.
Louisville. I know he had Louisville on his radar. Ended up, of course, choosing Vanderbilt. But he's a guy that maybe in towards the end of this recruiting cycle, a Georgia comes in, or a Georgia Tech, a Florida, any that has happened, and that happened in the last cycle where Vanderbilt jumps on a kid very, very early, a guy like Davion Walker, a very talented receiver who really was unknown, and Vanderbilt snagged him, and they built that relationship with him, and they said, hey, we like what you bring to the table, stick with us. And so it's been interesting to see that. And the challenge for Vanderbilt is, yes, you get in early on a lot of these guys and you build that relationship, but down the road they see that an SEC school, other schools see that you're in there, that Vanderbilt has offered that kid, they're going to hop in there and not be afraid to steal them. So that's a challenge, I think, for Vanderbilt. And I could talk about their recruiting approach for probably 2 to 3 hours. But it's just been it's a totally different approach from Derek Mason. And it's more analytical, it's more philosophical, and it's just they're thinking outside the box. And the recruiting class, having a top 35 class after a season like that, I'd love to know how often that has happened, because I don't think it's happened very often in the country.
We'd have to get the stat man out here to do that. Now, while we're at recruiting, right? I know there's someone that I know out here near me, 2025 kid. And this is how I'm looking at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's looking ahead, right? Like, they've already offered a kid out here, Bryce Davis, 2025 kid, edge rusher, right? Off the edge, everything like that. Measurables stands out to me. You're looking at a guy that's 6'4", 220, 225 already as a freshman, right? Going into his sophomore year. Looking at things like that, right? Like, he hadn't even touched the varsity field and he's already offered, right? Vanderbilt offer. And the fun fact was he actually got the Vanderbilt offer from his JV tape. So
Wow.
yeah, And watching that JV tape, I was impressed with it. So it makes sense. But like I said, Vanderbilt's kind of changing their recruiting philosophy, in my opinion. Right? You're looking for guys that are, you know, that what you need to be in an SEC type defense, and you're trying to get on them early. And evaluation is going to be crucial there. And obviously, if you're watching this, you can see Juan kind of start to giggle and laugh and chuckle. Our brigade is trying to make Juan laugh again. So um, I'm just letting you know, Billy, if you hear Juan randomly laugh or smirk, there's a legit reason why. But yeah, no, I mean
They don't want
to
me to
kind
be
of go back.
great. They don't want me to be great. That's all it is.
I'm just saying. Apparently, see this is the stuff we deal with, folks from the brigade. Listen, 1-3-16 is being stone cold right now. The puns are flowing. The puns are flowing. Yeah, but listen. So obviously we talked about recruiting, and I think the recruiting philosophy is changing. Something, right? Something is happening, right? The production on the field, we will be. Time will tell, right? Let's be honest here. As much as people want to bash Vanderbilt for being, just terrible, there's really, in my opinion, no other word to put it. You can't necessarily put it on Clark Lee in year one. In your Oh boy, we just about had it happen.
That's
Even getting my
that,
train
that,
of
no,
thought
that,
off here.
that well that is a great point. I do believe though that Vanderbilt, and I think what Clark Lee is doing is he's having that same mentality as as the Stanfords and the Dukes and the UNCs of, saying, hey, we're a great academic school, but we can also provide you something great athletically as well. So I think that Clark Lee has taken that approach. I mean, he's got a great pedigree. He's come from Notre Dame, and he knows what it takes to be successful, and he knows what it takes to recruit and to get into these kids' heads to say, hey, listen, let's just think more about not only, getting a great education and opportunity to play for the NFL. So, Billy, you made the great point of, taking a kid and putting him in the NFL. Clark Lee can actually now say that, whereas Derek Mason or anybody before, for them to say, hey, I'm going to bring you in here and give you a chance to eat, it was just unheard of.
Yeah, and I look at Dave Aranda at Baylor as a good comparison for kind of the style that Coach Lee, I think, wants to build at Vanderbilt, and the overall kind of culture approach. And they're actually two very similar coaches. I mean, they're both very stoic. They're both bald, so that's there too. But I thought that was a really good comparison for Dave Aranda and Coach Lee, and the way Aranda built Baylor. I mean, they were like Vanderbilt. They had a 2-10, I think 3-9, either 2-10 or 3-9 season, and then Aranda comes back, puts them in a bowl game, and now they're consistently 8, 9, even 10 wins a year right now. So I think, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen at Vanderbilt, but I think the footprint that Dave Aranda has created within the state of Texas and kind of within his radius and where that school is, Coach Lee wants to do the same thing. He talks about a 5-mile radius, around Vanderbilt, and kind of dominating that mid-state area, but also a state like Georgia, a state like even North Carolina, Alabama, of course, dipping into those states and finding kind of a hidden gem type of guy like a Davion Walker, a Martell Height, and they've found some success in the state of Georgia. So. I'm obviously, Robert, I think you touched on it last year. I don't know how much of it you can actually blame on Coach Lee, because that's kind of the hand he was dealt. But this year, there's going to be more pressure on Coach Lee and this entire team to actually perform to the level that they think they can.
I heard you, Billy, but in the meantime, I think there was a comment that got one going. My man had the face palm going on for there. Welcome to the DGD podcast, folks. This is our life. There was an interesting comment that I saw on Twitter, and it didn't pop up in our live chat per se, but I am pulling up on Twitter, and it looks like John brings up a point here, and it says Derek Mason was never the problem. Coach Lee has been very lucky to have the administration investing the money and support that past coaches never had. Let's stop blaming Mason for doing a decent job without the same support that Lee's already gotten. Obviously, I'm not the insider there, right? Obviously, when I think Vanderbilt and doing a coach like a really good job, you have to look at James Franklin, and that was the one that was the coach for me that really stood out there. But with Mason, right? Mason, is there some truth to that, right? In a sense of what kind of support we're getting here. I can't say that because I just don't know. Maybe you might know something or speak more on that, considering you do follow Vanderbilt.
Yeah, no, I think there is a little bit of truth to that. I will agree in saying that this administration has supported Coach Lee in a way that Vanderbilt fans haven't seen in a while. Now, there hasn't been anything substantial, but they are already constructing a new turf for the football field, a new design, so they're getting that in. And we all saw the renovations, the proposed renovations. But really, I mean, let's face it, no one really knows when those will be done. So there's still work to be done. But everything they've said, everything this administration has said, Candace Story Lee, the AD, and Daniel Diermeyer, the chancellor, they've been encouraging. Now, I will disagree with him in saying that Derek Mason, kind of, I think he said, take it easier on Derek Mason, something to that extent. I would disagree with that because when Coach Lee came in to take over the program, he talked about not just a talent gap and a depth gap for the team, but there was a mental hurdle that he as a coach and his entire coaching staff had to get across. The team had no motivation, they had no faith, there was just nothing there. The cupboard was so bare that I mean, Coach Lee was surprised, and he's talked about it. He said he had to do more psychological and emotional repair to that team than actual, talent development. I mean, he had to start emotionally and mentally before he even started on the field in talent development and building that depth. So that kind of points to how far things had dropped under Coach Mason. And I point to the last 2 years. The last 2 years, the recruiting really started to drop. I think he was in the 60s his last year. He was in the 50s his second to last year, and he just wasn't recruiting well enough. And it showed on the field. And they had, I think, 21 transfers before the 10-game season, the 10-game COVID season. So it's just the cupboard was bare, and so I would disagree with his assessment that Coach Mason doesn't deserve the blame. Now I'm not putting it all on him. Obviously, the administration probably could have done more, but I would still disagree with the fact that he believes Coach Mason. We need to take it easy. I don't know about that.
And there's another question here that we have, and I think it's a good transition point, right? I want to kind of transition into the schedule for Vanderbilt, and get to know the roster. Obviously, we talked a little bit about recruiting and incoming freshmen, things like that. But this question that's being posed, I think, is a good transition point. And we'll ask this: can Vanderbilt win 6 games? And he wants to see all 14 teams bowl eligible, which will lead us into the scheduling, right? Um, Vanderbilt actually has an interesting game to start their season, and that's against Hawaii. You're flying to Hawaii on August 27th, actually. So it's actually coming up in about 15 days for y'all, correct? Um, so you have, excuse me. So you go to Hawaii and then come back and play Elon and Wake Forest at home. Then you go to Northern Illinois, and then you start the SEC slate with Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And then to finish the first half, I should say, you host Ole Miss. So from a general standpoint here, Billy, I'm looking at it as that is a brutal brutal back half of that first half, I should say, because you have obviously you've got Alabama and you go to Tuscaloosa, so that is a brutal game. But Ole Miss is just, I wouldn't say just as bad, but that's a tough game as well in its own right. But breaking the first four games, right? I think Hawaii, I think you might come out of this game with a win there, maybe. Uh, I just don't know much about Hawaii. It's one of those things, And then Elon, obviously Elon being a local school to me, I think Elon is on the up and up. But I think Vanderbilt should have a little bit more talent there, and I'm going to give Vanderbilt a win there. Listen, with Wake Forest, it's very interesting because Hartman, Sam Hartman, their quarterback, apparently is out for an indefinite amount of time with a non-football related medical condition. So obviously, prayers up to him for that. But what does that look like? What does that make Wake Forest look like now? Right? How do things look with Wake Forest? I think their offense is just fine. I think in these first 6 games, you might actually see Vanderbilt. I'm gonna say 3 games here. I'm gonna say 3. I think you win at Hawaii, and I think you beat Elon, and I think you beat Northern Illinois in a close game. Obviously with losses to Wake Forest, Bama, and Ole Miss. So looking at this first half, I got 3-3 with a 0-2 SEC start. Juan or Billy, I'll let you take away, and then I'll let Billy be more insightful here. What is your thoughts on this first 6 games?
Depending on how Wake Forest responds, that could be one that believe that Coach Lee's going to have these guys fired up. There's going to be a different type of mindset. They're going to start to believe, right? So you go to Hawaii, you go to Elon, they're going to start to believe. They're going to start establishing, having a foundation. Going into that Wake Forest game is going to be that test game. I really think that, again, based off of, if their quarterback can, if they don't have the quarterback play, that Vanderbilt sneaks up and wins that Wake Forest game. So, I mean, 3-3, on the worst end, but I'd say 4-2. I'd give them 4-2 in those first 6 games.
Wow. So that's an interesting situation there. I'm not knocking it. I think, at first I thought 3-3 was a bit aggressive because, you just have to see what happens, right? Like I said, I don't know much about Hawaii, but I'm pretty sure it's not that great of a team. But we'll let Billy take it away here, obviously. And I think we got Scott in here. He thinks 3-9 overall, and we'll see what his schedule compares to ours and how things project out here. Billy, I'll let you take it away. I'll pull the graphic back up to let you probably know this by heart by now, but I will pull it up for those watching and see what their thoughts are. Get your predictions in the chat for the first 6 games.
Yeah, so obviously Vanderbilt starts the season at Hawaii, already 2 weeks away. Hawaii is an absolute train wreck of a team. They got a new head coach who he hasn't coached. He's coached football, but he hasn't called plays on either offense or defense in something like 5 or 6 years. So Hawaii, I will be very worried if Vanderbilt loses that game. I mean, that would be the same exact start to the season as last year. Except Hawaii is a lot worse than ETSU. So, Vanderbilt must win that game. I think they do. They're a 7.5-point favorite. I think they cover that. I think they find a way to just run the ball against Hawaii and end up getting that win. And then you got Elon. Elon is obviously an FCS team. They are not a team like ETSU last year. ETSU, I'm not making excuses for Vanderbilt, but they played in the FCS FCS championship. So they were. I mean, they had an running back. That was a really good ET team. Not making excuses for Vanderbilt, but Elon is not that. So I think Vanderbilt starts the season 2-0, and then they enter the Wake Forest game. I am not going to go as far as Juan went in saying if Sam Hartman is out, Vandy wins, because Wake Forest does have a good offense around him. I think I think if Wake Forest doesn't have Sam Hartman, that's a lot closer game, and Vanderbilt's chances of winning go up a lot higher. I'm not ready to say they beat Wake Forest at home. I just don't think that early in the season. If Wake Forest was week 7, week 8, maybe. But I think this is a type of program where further down the season you get, they get better. And that's what they did last year. So, but that's when your SEC games start coming in this schedule. excuse me. Then you got Northern Illinois, a team that is dangerous. And I don't think Vanderbilt fans should take that game lightly at all. It reminds me a lot of the Colorado State game, but I think Northern Illinois is better than Colorado State was last year. I think I'm going to pick Vanderbilt to win that. I think the Northern Illinois win, that will give them 3 wins. And you're sitting at 3-1 at that point in the season. And, at that point, you've got Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, and, the SEC gauntlet continues. But, the first half of the schedule, if Vanderbilt gets 3 wins, I don't see why you can't call it a success. If they get 4 wins out of that first half of that schedule, they have exceeded expectations, anyone's expectations for that team, because there's people out there that think Vanderbilt's not even going to get 3 wins this year. So I think for Vanderbilt, if they get to 3 wins, not going to be easy. Northern Illinois is a good team, and right now where they are in the rebuild, I don't know that I'm not super confident in that, but I do think they get to 3 wins. I think they get a win, and for that program, that would matter. Getting a win on the road like that would matter for them. So first half of the season, of course, those first 6 games, I think they go 3-3. I agree with you.
I mean, I think it's fair, right? When you look at the first 6 games, right, I hate to sound bad about this, but I feel like it's just the way this is going to be. Alabama is going to kill Vanderbilt, and the only way they could possibly lose is if Alabama legitimately just destroyed themselves, and I just don't see that. So I'm not even going to say that. But Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss is just too powerful offensively. I know they lost Levy, but you still got Zach Evans, and Zach Evans can run the damn ball and catch out of the pass. So, looking at the first 2, right? Looking at the first 2 games of the SEC slate, I just don't see those wins at all. But I think you have to take advantage of the non-conference games. You have to. You just have to if you're Vanderbilt this year. And I think you do that with Hawaii. I think you do that with Northern Illinois. I think it's a close game at Northern Illinois, but I think it's one that I think is manageable if you play the right way. It's 4 games in, so I think you have some guys building some chemistry, especially from the offensive line losing Steen. That's a sting, not Sting. You got to figure out that replacement. That's why we have the offseason. But moving on to the second half of the games, you come to Georgia, and then you go to Como. You have a bye week, and then you host South Carolina. And then you go to Kentucky, and then you finish off the season hosting Florida and Tennessee. And to me, I think you get lucky and beat Missouri. Maybe. I think it's so close of a game that you might get away with that right there. But let's be honest. When you have I'll pull this back up for a second. When you go to Georgia, South Carolina is going to be a wild card team with Spencer Rattler there. I just think that Shane Beamer's got that program trending up, and I just see, I think South Carolina pulls away from this. I know. Listen, y'all played them close last year too. I just think that I think South Carolina pulls away with it. Kentucky, I think Kentucky is just what y'all are trying to do, but they do it efficiently. So I just don't see that pulling off. And with Florida and Tennessee, I just don't feel comfortable giving Vanderbilt the win there. But I think the one game that you could possibly pull away is Missouri, even in Como, because Como is a crazy place, but it's something that I think is doable because we still have to see, right? I know Missouri named their QB1, but is that enough, right? Do they have the defense, things like that? It's going to be an interesting game. I think it'll be an interesting game, but I'm going to give the benefit of a doubt to Vanderbilt and say y'all pull that off. So
Yeah,
in my go ahead, Billy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Missouri. That's the one team I think if they were to get an SEC win, that's where it comes from. I'm not ready to say they're gonna beat Missouri this year, but it does come at a pretty good time. You got Georgia. I mean, there's not a better team to prepare you for that Missouri game than Georgia. And then coming out, that'll depend on how they come out of that Georgia game. If they come out of that Georgia game confident, say they only lose by a couple touchdowns, maybe 3 touchdowns, that could give them some confidence heading into that Missouri game, and that's the most winnable SEC game on the schedule. And then I think I would look at South Carolina after that. But then at that point, Kentucky on the road in Lexington, that's going to be a tough one. And then you do get Florida and Tennessee at home. Um, but those teams are just they're just like I said, they're just dangerous, and especially for Florida with the type of quarterback they have, Anthony Richardson in Tennessee, type of offense they have. I'm not ready to say Vanderbilt. Not saying they can't compete, but just not ready to pick them as a winner there. So the second half of the schedule, as it usually is every year, is much tougher than the first half. But I do think it's nice for them to be able to build a little bit of confidence with teams like Hawaii, Elon, and Northern Illinois. I mean, at this point in year two under Clark Lee, they should win all three of those games. And Wake Forest 6-7 years ago, that could have been a fourth win. But at this point, with Sam Hartman and the program and Dave Clawson, what he's built there, not ready to say they'll beat them at home. It is an 11 a.m. kick, and without Hartman, we'll have to see. Maybe I change that, getting closer to that game. But yeah, second half of the season, we'll see how beat up this team is. I mean, conditioning and straining and just the pure stamina of this team after. I mean, that stretch you play in Tuscaloosa against Alabama, and then you welcome Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin to Nashville, and then you go to Athens to play Georgia. I mean, where are they mentally and kind of conditioning wise after that, and how many injuries do they have? That's another thing to look at. Can they make it out of that little stretch right there, that 3-game stretch? And I think that'll define their season if they're able to make it out, half alive after that.
I was sitting here thinking about this, and when it comes to the schedule, as I pull this back up for a quick second, right? Like you talk about pulling up the first half, using the first half for momentum. I think when you look at the schedule here, you obviously your goal is to win games, but I think you could take things away from or take away things like competing. How long can you stay competitive, right? Considering Vanderbilt's in that rebuild that they're in, how long can you stay competitive, right? I don't expect Vanderbilt to do anything remotely close to winning a game against Georgia per se, right? You play Georgia and Bama, ridiculous schedule, just those two alone. Can you give Georgia hell? Can you give Alabama hell maybe for a quarter or two, right? What can you make something possible and take away from that, right? Use the momentum from the first half if we obviously go and expect it here. You know, the expectations, winning those 3 games in the first half, or maybe even 4, depending on if you look at Wake Forest. Then try to make something out of the back half. Because you listen, for Vanderbilt, the SEC East is a gauntlet. It's one of those things where Georgia fans have to take the perspective out of you have to take your fandom out of this. Understand what it's like to not be a Georgia fan. Try to and see what the SEC is like. When you go and you look at playing Tennessee, Tennessee in year 2 of Heupel is going to be quite interesting. It really will. I'm just saying it will be interesting to see what they're able to do. Do they have a knob, to kind of adjust the speed of the offense to help the defense? We'll see. But if they do that, Tennessee becomes a real threat to the in the SEC East. Florida, first year head coach, right? Billy Napier, we know. But listen, there's still a ton of talent there. Not on the level of Georgia, but there's still a ton of talent, especially compared to what you're seeing, with Vanderbilt and things like that. But at the same time, you have to make magic somehow. And I think, like I said, winning in Como will help the the trajectory of the team moving forward, right? You don't want to lose, a ton of, you don't want to lose every conference game, right? But if you're able to take away a win from a Missouri team, I think there's a possibility that you build off of that, and you sit there and you use it for fuel, or however you want to look at it, moving forward, right? Because what you with a coaching change, even in year two, you still have a ton of that former regime's players. And I'm not knocking the players. It's just everybody has a different system. You're not going to hire somebody with the same exact thing. It's just not going to happen. The blueprint's going to be different, right? So you're getting your players in. You're getting, you're filtering through players, right? And that matters to some degree. Is it an excuse? No, right? But at the same time, like, it makes sense, right? Because if you're Georgia, there should be no excuse because of the talent that you've got from a recruiting standpoint. Should just go out and do what you have to do anyway. But this, when we're talking Vanderbilt, right? That's something that people have to take into context here. You don't have the talent that Georgia has. You don't have the talent that Bama has. You're not even close just yet, right? Like, you're not there at all. Take it for granted, or Georgia fans, I feel like, take it for granted, and just think that it's just they're terrible. They're terrible. They're trying. Like, they're trying, and you're not as fortunate to have 5-star after 5-star after 5-star, and that's sitting the bench, right? Come on, you're just not in that situation if you're Vanderbilt yet. But I guess my thought is, when we look at the overall season standing, projection wise, I feel like somewhat realistically, you're looking at 4-8. And honestly, I think that's not bad for Vanderbilt. I really don't think that it's that bad, right? You take advantage of the non-conference games. I think you have to do that, like we said. And then I think you make magic happen against Missouri. I think it's doable, but I think you have to do that moving forward, because you can't afford to go, without a win in SEC play. I just feel that has to happen. So I think Missouri's the most doable. So for me, I've got 4-8 with a win, with 1-7 in the conference. What would you say your projection would be for this season?
Yeah, I'm going to go with 3-9. In my conversation with Robbie Weinstein last night, we had talked about this topic and saying, we both agree on, we wouldn't be surprised if Vanderbilt, ends up going 4-8. I mean, maybe even 5-7. But at the same time, where they are in this rebuild, it's year two. I also want to kind of slow the roll on a lot of people in saying that, they went 2-10 last season, and they were coming off an 0-10 season, and they lost to UConn, or they beat UConn. They didn't lose to UConn. They beat UConn barely by a game-winning field goal, and they beat Colorado State on the road. So those were your wins, and so how much does that change this year? Who knows? That's what I'm interested to see down the stretch, because you look at that schedule down the stretch of the season. Missouri, at Missouri in Columbia, that's down the stretch, second half of the season. You welcome in South Carolina at home, and I think that South Carolina game in Nashville is always interesting. It's never dull. And then Robbie and I talked about it last night. The Tennessee game in Nashville. Clark Lee and that staff and that whole team is going to be motivated to play them in Nashville, especially with the loss last season. So I'm not coming out here and saying they're going to go 4-8, but I'm also not going to rule it out, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do find a way to pick off at least one SEC team down the stretch of that season, because of how much they improved down the stretch of last season. And I think that would carry over into this season, kind of improving down the stretch. So we'll see, but I'm going to stick with 3-9 for this team with those 3 non-conference wins, and coming real close to beating both Missouri and South Carolina. I think those are both going to be really close games. So I'm going to have to stick with 3-9, and we'll have to see what year two looks like for Clark Lee.
I mean, I think that's still manageable, right? I think being patient, you have to be patient in this situation. I feel like most universities, most fan bases are not patient in that constant change creates a never-ending cycle of, right. You're basically you're playing roulette basically, and just hoping that something hits. But even then, it might not be sustainable, right? Um, but final question here for you, Billy. Obviously, we talked about the schedule where we project, what record we're projecting. Who are going to be some folks to keep an eye out for if Vanderbilt is to get to 3-9 or 4-8? Who are some names to know for folks, especially from a Georgia perspective? Who are some folks that we might need to keep an eye out for this season for Vanderbilt?
Well, typically for most SEC teams, you start right with the offense. I'm going to start with the defense, though. There's two players, one by the name of Anthony Orji, and then he's a linebacker, and then another guy by the name of Jalen Mahoney. He had several really, I mean, effort. Made of effort plays and interceptions, and I mean, you look at Mahoney and kind of the improvement he's made, not just under Mason, but also under Coach Lee, and how Coach Lee has come in and kind of, carried over his career. And now I think, potentially Jalen Mahoney could be an NFL player. So Jalen Mahoney, Anthony Orji, defensively, Kane Patterson also in there at the linebacker spot defensively. So that's defensively, but offensively, I mean, you got to go to the quarterback, Mike Wright, and I mentioned it earlier with what they want to do offensively and their philosophy, they're going to want to run the football. So Mike Wright is going to run the football. There's going to be a lot of designed runs, and there's going to be a lot of plays where Mike Wright is just running for his life, and he's going to have to play like a Lamar Jackson, but with basically, you know, maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds, if that, of of protection back there. Most times, maybe even 1 second. So, he's going to have to run a lot, and they will run him a lot. So health is another thing. Can he stay healthy? But other than Mike Wright, running back Ramon Davis, transfer from Temple. He was hurt in their Week 3 game last year against Stanford, but he's back healthy and he's looking good on the practice field. So looking forward to seeing Ramon Davis out there. And one more for you is a receiver, Will Shepard, a guy that looked really good against South Carolina last year. Had I think a 40-yard touchdown run down the sideline where he broke a couple tackles. And he's also shown his ability to go up and make plays as well. One more guy, though, before I get out of here, is the punter, Matt Hayball. He's a transfer from FAU, and he's got quite a leg. So Vanderbilt might have one of the better punters in the SEC, and I think that helps them. Whether other SEC fans know it or even care, I think that'll help Vandy a lot because their punt coverage has not been great these past 3-4 years. So yeah, those are kind of a broad range of guys. I'll try to narrow it down for you during Georgia week, though.
Now, listen, Georgia fans don't take special teams for granted because when you look at Jake Camarda, right? Jake Camarda was huge for us in the most critical games when you look at it, right? Especially against Clemson, pinning teams back very deep and causing those. Listen, it changes the game. It can impact the game. So even a special teamer, it can matter, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the way it looks like. But listen, so thank you for letting us know some of those names and obviously, kind of getting a feel for Vanderbilt because obviously, it's the off season, the season's ramping up. Listen, people are coming out of hibernation, right, getting ready for football. They're waking up to football. Hey, it's right around the corner. So it's always good to kind of get these things in your head and really kind of keep an eye out for folks because you don't want to sit there and get caught off guard, right? So that's why we do these things, for you, the listeners and the viewers. Where can people find you, though, Billy, if they want to listen to the Dore Report?
Yeah, so they can find us on Twitter at Dore_report, on Instagram, Dore.report. They can find us on Facebook as well. Just search the Dore Report in there. Find us on our YouTube channel, the Dore Report. Let's see, we got an Instagram. Yeah, I mentioned Instagram. Of course, they can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. And definitely happy and excited about this new venture with SEC Unfiltered and Chris Phillips and what he's been able to develop and start with that new idea. And I know we're both excited to be a part of it. Hopefully, we continue to build that team. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this season, man. We're already 2 weeks away. I can't believe it. Can't wait. I already can't wait to watch Week 0, Vanderbilt in Hawaii, in a 9,000 seat soccer stadium at 9:30 on Week 0 with really nothing else on. But that's what college football is about. Watching those type of games. And I think surprisingly there will be more eyes than everyone expects on that game because it'll be at 9:30. It'll be late. But that's kind of the point where a lot of people still want to kind of watch whatever football's on. So I think along with me, there'll be other people watching that one. But thanks for having me on, Rob.
Absolutely. Listen, if you're a Georgia fan and you forget these handles or social medias, check out our website, dgdpodcast.com. You can also find them there. Since you're part of the SEC Unfiltered Network, you can find us there. So if you forget about the Dore Report, just letting you know, check out the website. You can find them there. You can listen to the podcast. It gives you a link straight to their website. So just another outlet there to make sure, obviously, listen, we're partners basically. So gotta give a shout out there. But listen, hey man, it was a pleasure having you on, kind of getting this insight, right? Kind of different perspective, right? Trying to take the bias out of things, right? Getting that unbiased perspective and feel for Vanderbilt. So obviously, listen, it was a pleasure having you on. Looking forward to the season. It might not be Georgia football, but I mean, at the same time, college football is college football. Probably end up watching it anyway. But good luck to Vanderbilt against Hawaii, and I guess it's Oahu. I guess.
Yeah, Rob, thanks for having me on, man. Have a good one.
Absolutely, guys. With that being said, make sure if you're listening on the podcast, make sure to like it, follow. And also, 5-star reviews matter, folks. 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to let us know what you think. And if you're watching, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, even Twitch at this point. And also, one last comment here. If you want to join the brigade, they're accepting applications. Just saying. With that being said, though, have a great weekend. We'll catch you back on the next episode, and go Dogs.